Excited. Sett session, episode 1. So you know what? It makes me really excited to start this because I think it's super important that, we come together as a community, we ask questions, we get a feel for what's going on, honestly, as frequently as possible. Because, that's what's interesting about an open collective like Badger is just people from all around the world coming together to collaborate, and so many things are happening. Having an opportunity to talk about it, for people to listen, to engage, and to answer everyone's questions, I think is important. So I'm pumped, man. I'm excited we can do this.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. The growth of Badger DAO has been kind of crazy this first month, really. And the community is just weighing in from all over the place. Like the community is building out the team, and there's a lot of information flowing around. So I think it's what kind of triggered this idea was just, not everything can be clearly synthesized in a BIP, and not everyone's going to read all the BIPs, and there's, models and Excel sheets and all crazy things like that, and plans for the future. So yeah, first of a series of indefinite length of the Sett sessions, where we'll just kind of go through what's going on with Badger DAO, what's going on with us, what's going on with the community,
Yep.
All that good stuff. Excited.
Me too. So let's start with the current state of Badger. I think that's a great place to start. So we launched on December 3rd. And what's interesting, John, is, you've been part of the community since like September, like right when the Discord first kicked off. You were one of the first people in there, and you helped make a lot of the most important decisions leading up to launch. But in the last 40 days or whatever it's been, 35 days, what's happened is, way above everyone's expectations, right? And where we're at today, I think we're about to eclipse about 700 million in total value locked. In the last 35 days, the DAO's generated, I think, $1.3 million in profit. And we have, thousands of people from around the world that are collaborating. And that's probably one of the most exciting things for me is just how involved the community is and how thoughtful and insightful and just genuine shared ownership / skin in the game that we're seeing just from people's participation. So it's an interesting time for Badger because, obviously Bitcoin on Ethereum, we all believe is something that's going to continue to grow and expand. So for us today, top priority, and has been the top priority well before launch, but top priority is security, right? Like that's by far the most important thing today. So when we're identifying and evaluating, really what to do with this current state and how to extend it and grow it and further build the community and build new products, it all starts really at security. And that's I think that's important to share with the community. And there was some questions about it, but not that many, but it is the most important thing to think about, right, John? Like how many other projects have you seen that unfortunately, had a great start, but then found themselves in a peculiar situation because of security flaws?
Yeah, no, it's kind of rampant in the industry, and there's a lot of different solutions, and it's been great that people have had options so far with Badger through Cover, and then now Nexus Mutual is up and running. I guess the bug bounty was just released today. So timely. So fortunately, I think part of it was, okay, let's start. You guys started with largely a lot of, start with forked code that had been out there in a while with a lot of money in it. So you have a solid base, and then be careful with changes going forward and how we're approaching things, while giving people the option to get additional security if they want. But, I think most people probably just kind of hop in and hope for the best, and fortunately things have been good so far. So I think continued focus on that is definitely key, and probably one of the things we're looking to differentiate with kind of moving forward beyond just Bitcoin, but what else is what are the other kind of important things for the people in the DAO? What are the other principles?
Yeah, because the current state of Badger is we have our Sett Vault product that obviously has garnered some traction in the market. But, really that's one piece to the pie. Like, how do we create an app that is really the one-stop shop for all things on Bitcoin on Ethereum, and then eventually on other chains as we continue to expand? And that's where I think, the focus of the DAO should be in the products that we bring to market are things that are complementary, things that continue to optimize for the assets that users already have deposited and give more value to those users. Because what's interesting, I was talking to a few people about this the other day. You think about the DeFi loop. When you have tokenized Bitcoin today, you can take it really just to do a few things with it. There's not that much you can do with it, right? You can take it and provide it as liquidity on Uniswap, SushiSwap, or Curve. You could take it and you can, use it as a lending and borrowing asset, or Compound and Cream and Aave. But it kind of stops there. Like, once you take that action, there's really not much more you can do with it. And then Badger comes around and says, park those assets with us and we'll optimize the yield that you're getting from those assets. But really, those are now illiquid assets. How do you continue the DeFi loop by opening up those illiquid assets and then allowing those users to then participate in DeFi and whatever protocols that they want to leverage? And I think that's, we talk about the state of where we're at, a lot of users, a lot of capital in the system. I think that's the most important next step as we continue to grow and expand.
Yeah, I guess let's wrap up the Badger part for what we got. There's, I guess, coming up, the next big thing with that will be the release of the, version 2 UI. And that'll be, initially just what's there, easier to access, look a little slicker. I know that was a lot of the feedback kind of early on. It looked good, but there was some, a lot of feedback from the users, so that was taken to heart.
Around UX in particular, right? We need to simplify it. It wasn't simple enough having to go to multiple pages to put in the Sett and then put into stake, and it was not, and obviously the speed of it, right? It'd take a long time to load and these types of things. So to your point, like V2, the app, which should be out in a couple of days, right? We're just doing final testing, but once it's out, that's going to be a way better experience for users, and that would be really the foundation. We built that as the foundation so that we can include all these other features in the app, right? Like when you start, obviously, with Digg up next, turning on Digg and being able to manage and look at the rebase and how it's pegged to Bitcoin and how you can deposit Digg into different vaults, and then you start turning on things like minting and quick deposits and withdrawals and things like that. The V2 really needed to be structured in a way that supported that versus, today, right, John, it's more geared towards specifically the vaults, right? And that's it.
Right. And the plan, I guess we'll touch on this a little later, but, there's obviously Digg coming up next. That'll have its own sets for people to access, maybe some other places to interact, informational dashboard. But then beyond that, we'll talk about, I guess, down the line, but some of the ideas and things that are currently cooking for future products and like how you can consolidate that in one spot. Yeah, and I agree, like, filled out the application nicely out of the gate, but once you start adding a few things on, it would have gotten a little clunky. So yeah, I think hopefully people will be pretty excited for that coming out.
I love V2 personally. Like, I'm a big fan, and I like it much more than people had. But you know what, John? Like, I think what a lot of people want to hear about is, and we hear this question all the time, right? It's like, when Digg?
Yep.
Which was, it's a different Badger being a DAO and being so open and having, of course, the community really leading and deciding on all decisions. It's going to be different from what a lot of people are used to with projects, right? Where they're working behind the scenes, and then it's like, hey, we're launched, like, here we are, and everyone hears about it and everyone's excited. With us, it's much different because it could be months in advance that the community is actively involved in making these decisions in the forums while we prepare for the votes and structure, and at the same time working on audits, working on actually developing the underlying smart contracts, integrating with our front, doing everything necessary to actually bring it to life. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for everyone, including ourselves, like how we digest the data that's coming back, right? Because we too want to get it out there as fast as possible. But back to our original point about security, we need to be absolutely focused around ensuring that it's as secure as possible. And we've gone through the internal reviews, the external reviews with auditors. We've tested it ad nauseum with the team, with through peer review and all these types of things. But I would confidently say, based on where we're at today, I think that we'll be able to bring Digg to market in the next week. And I know I said that a few weeks ago. We actually changed a couple things on the Digg vault that required us to do some additional testing. And we also wanted to make sure V2 is ready now. But I genuinely think that we'll be ready for that next week. And right now, as it stands, we're going through the final stages of the security review with our internal vault strategist bench. I'm going to call them that. And then from that point, we can bring it to market. Great.
Yeah, and I can touch a little bit on, I guess, some of the other components that aren't, we could just go ahead and launch Digg. It's just ample fork with different Oracle, and it is what it is, take it or leave it. Maybe there's some, sets out there. Obviously we want to get it all tested and get it out there, but I think with the community coming together, there's been a lot of great ideas in the different forum posts, just in Discord period, discussing, okay, well, I think everyone kind of understands what Digg is. It's a rebasing token pegged to the price of Bitcoin. They know they're volatile, but we also know that no rebasing token has met its goal yet. So Ample hasn't met its goal. It's still very volatile. It's not stuck at $1 and okay, great, we did it. Let's go home. So, okay, well, what do we have at our disposal to be able to help with the stability of Digg? Taking in information from the community and from what other rebasing projects have been. So I think that's what we started looking at near the end of last year before the holidays, and getting that information, trying to consolidate some of it through the forum process. And that kind of led into a whole other thing of, well, we're making really important decisions now. What is the forum process? How do we get, we had to get the snapshot up and running. And then we started working through putting in the general information proposals and then the BIPs to get feedback. How do we want to phrase the different, voting in the BIPs to then get to a snapshot? So that started getting honed in while we worked on some of these new models. And also the Digg, I'll talk about the new models and the BIPs. I think that'll kind of dovetail into some of the work we're doing on, emissions and treasury and things like that. I could jump into a little bit. The other thing that was a lot of feedback was just the drop details. So, 15% of Digg are being airdropped to the Badger community. 14.5% of that is going to go to just all users of Badger vaults since inception. 0.5% is going to go to the participants in the meme drop. In the meme collaboration, so NFT holders and people that staked B Badger and the Badger LP token to earn pineapples on meme. But we came up with a few mechanisms based on all the feedback that ended up not being particularly simple, and I collaborated with a number of people in the community, specifically DeFi Frog and Mr. Poe, I think the most, to go figure out these different kind of ways that we want to distribute the token. And I'll run through real quick. There's been some posts out there that I've put on Notion, that I've shared out on Twitter, that go through it, but we're doing 55% that's going to be purely based on rewards that people have earned in Badger throughout since inception. So that includes if you have a multiplier, if you've been staking this whole time, your multiplier has been increasing. So you should have been getting higher rewards relative to someone who was not staking or came in later. So that's built in. But we really wanted to help the little guy, I guess. Just, spread it out to the community. I think we want to build a strong community. The way you do that is you are trying to do things in a quote unquote fair way. So what we actually did is we're applying a route to all of the rewards. So you just list out all the rewards that have been earned, and then you apply a 1.75 root to it, so not quite square root, and then you distribute the rewards proportionally that way. But what that did was open up a room for a Sybil attack where you could just stake a whole bunch of addresses, and you can earn to Badger over the next week, and then you get $2,000 worth of Digg. It just didn't seem right, and it opened it up for this attack. So what we actually did is if you were to actually compare the proportional distribution, if you were to do a linear, so just comparing, okay, here's the list of all of the rewards earned, and you distribute Digg linearly, and then here's the list of doing that with a 1.75 root. What we actually did is just put a cap on the multiplier between the linear and 1.75 root distribution. So as you go down that list and you get towards the bottom, your people are getting a multiplier based on what they would have gotten for the linear distribution, 10, 20, 30, 40x what they would have gotten for linear. So we're capping that at 7. So it's still, you're getting 7x what you would in a linear distribution. So it's still pretty good. But it's, making it so that people can't come in and just, light up a bunch of small addresses and, claim a whole bunch of Digg. So I think it, helps the guys at the top a little bit. I think it helps guys in the middle a lot. Which is great. So that's 55%. 35% we're actually doing the same way, but we are only doing it to addresses that have a certain stake days ratio. That's basically just how much Badger have you been staking since the beginning per day. So one Badger staked for 1 day is 1 stake day. So add those all up since inception, compare it to your total earned rewards. If you're over 2, then you get to participate in that. You get to participate in that 35%. And then the last 10 is purely stake days. And those are really focused on, and that will be distributed linearly. So, and that was really focused on people in the community really wanting to reward people that had been staking. So if you've just been a whale that's been farm and dumping, you wouldn't be getting any of that 45% of the distribution. So it's a lot. There's a lot of bips and posts and other things out there about a lot about it, but I'm just hoping it's a complicated concept. So hoping a verbal representation.
Yeah, no, John, it helps, right? Like it helps, and in the end of the day, we're trying to make it as fair as possible, and Badger only becomes successful in the long term if you have a community of people that share the same values and beliefs, have the same level of skin in the game, and are genuinely building this together, right? Like Badger's not the company in this truest sense. It's really an open collective, and that's why the drop was so important. Now, subsequent to the drop, as it relates to the Digg launch, we learned a lot from the Badger launch, right? Of course. And what we learned there was the importance of having somewhere to put the asset that you've been dropped and have enough of a value proposition for those users to participate in that. And then that's where the Digg vaults, the 3 vaults that are going to launch when Digg launches along with the airdrop, are critical. And those are 2 LP vaults, one that's Uniswap, one SushiSwap, with similar strategies to the existing vaults that we have, where we reinvest a percentage of the rewards back into your LP position, and then half are claimable. And then the Digg-only vault. And the Digg-only vault gets me super excited for a few reasons. One, it's obviously going to have Digg rewards associated with it. But it's really the keys, it's really what I believe is going to help us differentiate the ability for a rebasing asset to maintain a level of stability along with composability. So I did a little post the other day just because I was talking to a bunch of friends and they didn't really understand what BDigg was all about. And I dug into it a bit, but it really has to do with the Digg vault. So when you put any assets in our vault, you get a B version of it back. So B Badger or BDigg. And that essentially just represents your share of the vault. So if the vault had 10 when you put it in and you put in 1, you'd have 10% share. If it grows accordingly, you still have the appropriate share. And that's really important for Digg because it's going to be rebasing inside the vault and it's going to have rewards go inside the vault. But at the same time, your now BDigg token doesn't rebase. But regardless of the situation, whenever you withdraw BDigg or you withdraw Digg from the vault and give your BDigg back, you're going to get your equivalent share. And that's how we're going to ideally approach this composability issue that's plagued different rebasing assets and making it really hard for them to integrate with different DeFi protocols because it's hard for those DeFi protocols to handle the rebasing. And that also speaks to centralized exchanges, right? Like it's hard for them to handle the rebase too. So I'm pretty optimistic around our ability to accomplish that with this vault system. And I think that's, and I said it earlier, but I'll repeat it, like, the vaults are the foundation of Badger. And it's from that foundation that we can then build on top of it additional products that optimize because of that, Digg being one of them, right? And then in the same sentence, you got this idea around stability. And stability, you talked about AMPO. We've seen different things with more of the bond and coupon models and how they've deviated from PEG. Right? There is no exact solutions, and the solutions that we're attempting as well. Like this whole space right now is an experiment to an extent, right? So this is all about learning and adjusting accordingly. But I tend to believe that we've written off the AMPO-based rebasing mechanics a little too early, and I think using a vault and being able to have automated buy and sell strategies that the vault executes on the user's behalf at scale can really help adjust the peg accordingly, because the rebasing mechanics that we have in place with Digg, they're meant to adjust based on buy and sell demand, right? It's about building game theory into the token. So when the price, when it's in a positive rebase, so when Digg's higher than the price of Bitcoin, it'll give the supply will expand. So you now have more tokens. You say, okay, I'm going to sell, right? Of course, I got 20% more. I'm going to sell my tokens. That brings the price down. But on the buy side, it retracts, the supply retracts. So then you actually have less tokens. That has proven not to be inducing enough to have users buy, right? Like that's been the missing piece. And if we can have different automated stability strategies that maybe have reserves that buy on behalf of the user to push it back into a positive rebase, or leverage things like we talked that I'm sure we're going to get into, but peg-based rewards for Digg that solicit some type of activities, I really think that can help Digg meet the price target of Bitcoin that it's trying to stay close to.
Yeah, and so I guess a couple of other components. The one that is live out there, I'm sure maybe there's other, examples of it, but, the moon-based rover for based is kind of like the most clear analog for what, BDIG will be. It's an ERC20 representation of your deposit into this pool. Its price just fluctuates, but it's, supply is static, or, it adjusts based on, minting for, depositing or redeeming from a pool. A couple other, components with Digg that people did ask about. I'll slide in here with the snapshot timing. All the snapshots for the stake days, rewards earned, all that, the meme drop will be done within 24, 36 hours of it going live. There's going to be a lot of moving parts with it going live, so I don't think we're going to come out and say it's going to be exactly this time. So everything you can do to get prepped and ready for it, do it now. So it might not always be exact. So there's NFTs to collect, there's Badger to stake. All of those things can help your proportion of Digg dropped. And I'll touch on one thing, that there should be a BIP coming through today, hopefully, that you mentioned for peg-based rewards. That is kind of our first attempt at something to help Digg maintain the peg. And this is kind of looking at, okay, well, what do we have available at our disposal immediately? Okay, well, we have the distribution of Digg, and then we have, $700 million in these vaults, and we have, all these users that are depositing to the Badger vaults right now. So what we're doing is now we're going to classify Digg and non-Digg vaults. So Digg vaults are the Digg only, the Digg LP, and then non-Digg are literally anything else. So right now that's all of the Badger vaults, the BTC vaults, and like the WBTC, ETH, Sushi vault. So we're classifying those as kind of two different categories. And then we're assuming that the Digg vault depositors are natural Digg holders, and that the non-Digg vault depositors are natural Digg sellers. And at baseline, when everything's equal, we're going to split the Digg rewards 50-50 across those two categories. And this will all come up for community vote, so we can adjust these percentages, but this is kind of just the initial proposal that we'll be kind of putting forward. But as for each cycle, which is running, I think, every 2 hours now, where the rewards are distributed, what we will be doing is checking the price of, the price of Digg relative to the peg. And if it is above the peg, we'll be actually shift the rewards to flow more towards the Badger vaults, which should hopefully incentivize them to claim and sell some of it. And during that time, there'll be positive rebases going on. So the actual the Digg vaults themselves will be getting more Digg through the positive rebases, but we're going to have a cap on that, where the Digg vaults will always get at least 30% of all Digg-based rewards. And then, I think it's once Digg reaches like 130% or above the peg, then we kind of hit that maximum. So that's when 70% would go to Badger sets, and then 30% would go to Digg sets. And then on the bottom side, we're much more aggressive, where we're going to set it at an 80%. Where once the Digg is below 80% of the Bitcoin price, actually 100% of the Digg rewards will go to the Digg sets. So they might be going through negative rebases, but they'll be getting more through the emissions, and the Badger vaults will not get any emissions at that point. So, like I said, a lot of parameters involved there. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what's important to point out there is like what we're hoping to accomplish with that, right? Like, of course, we have to bring all these things to the community and go through them in detail and collect appropriate feedback and make changes. But what are we trying to accomplish, right? What are we trying to accomplish with the classification of the different types of set and the actual activity that we potentially see happening that will drive towards the peg?
Yeah, it's definitely, we just hope that, if you start seeing the APY for these Digg vaults start to skyrocket, because they went from getting 50% of the rewards to 100% because the price drop, that should hopefully incentivize people to come in, rush in, buy Digg, get into the set, add to the LP, increase liquidity, will dampen any downward price movement. And, we think it's just a good first step using what we currently have. And, the reward emissions are done off chain, so we can, we're working through the technical feasibility, but, we're optimistic and don't have to make any major changes to do that. And this can be, a first step before, looking into there's been a couple different models proposed for the, automated buy and sell set. It's another step. And, we've also talked about models for Digg V2, whether that's, another token built on top or, more advanced, bonding mechanisms if one of these other things works. But, it's all about, we're not going to find out if Digg worked in the next 3 months, right? It's going to be a long process. And these are good kind of first steps, take the feedback, see how they go, and then, go from there.
Yeah, unlocking the value in those, it goes back to the same thing that we spoke about before, right? As relates to other products and why the DAO should bring certain types of products to the market. But, when there's $700 million in Bitcoin sitting in certain vaults, there's obviously the ability for those people in those vaults to take certain types of action, and they already are Bitcoin on Ethereum, that use Bitcoin on Ethereum in DeFi, and that are familiar with our systems, right? Like, it's like by far the most bullseye type of profile of a user that you want to try and incentivize to take certain action. And that action could be that to buy and sell at the right time based on their, the reward that they get, right? Like, it's an ROI calculation that they're going to make based on, like, okay, if I use this Bitcoin that I have sitting here to take these types of actions, like, what's my potential reward? And if you can align it on both sides, right, where people are driving in, rushing into Digg vaults because the APYs have increased since the other side hasn't been doing, their side of the bargain, that could be a great equilibrium. But I don't think that in itself, so maybe it does, but I don't think that in itself will be, the stability, strategy. I think it's multiple layers, right? I think automated vaults and automated strategies, potentially, two token model down the road, who knows? But I do think, like, starting there is a great start. And I think it's a really phenomenal start for us to see what works. And it's also going to be very dependent, and this is what's, a lot of uncertainties around. It's going to be dependent on what happens with the price of Bitcoin, and then how Bitcoin and how the alt market responds to Bitcoin, right? Because, like, when you have an asset that represents 70% of the market, 75% of the market, and it's been doing what it's been doing the last month, if it starts going the other direction, but the alt market starts picking up, that's a perfect environment for an extended positive rebase, right? Like, technically, if in the last, month, if Digg was in the wild, there's a high likelihood, no matter the stability, no matter what you were doing, that you would probably find yourself in a negative rebase because Bitcoin is just going up so much. And it's just, you just can't keep up with it. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that plays into this whole picture.
Yeah, and a nice second order effect, and something we're always kind of keep in the back of mind too of doing more dynamic rewards, and we'll I guess touch on a little bit on more plans there. Is we make money on fees, right? There's some withdrawal fees, eventually there'll be APY fees, profit fees. You incentivize people to come in and out, like that's just good for the DAO. It's more value for the DAO. So having gamified experiences, that's what DeFi is really all about. So you do that, gamification, you get people coming in and out, and then we are able to actually reap some of the rewards from that and use that for, further building and security and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Most certainly. Well, why don't we dig into, no pun intended, why don't we dig into some other things that we've been focused on behind the scenes. And I think we'll get to new products. I think that's really important and the vision there. But I'd love to give the community, and we've had some questions about this. We saw some questions prior to this AMA about talk about the war room that you've mentioned a few times on Discord, talk about audits and what you're doing around security. So I'd love to share that with the community. And I've been leading that on this side of the fence, so I can take the lead in the conversation. But nonetheless, prior to our launch, we conducted an audit, and shortly after launch, we engaged with an additional auditing firm. Those results are going to come out very shortly. The report was, glowing colors, no issues. It was all great, which is awesome. But we'll share that publicly with the community very soon. But it was, audits are audits, right? Like it's smart eyes looking at your code, but smart eyes miss stuff in code all the time. I'm not saying that that's what our auditor's done, but you can't, when you're building protocols like the Vault products and Digg and all the products to come, or you're building DeFi protocols in general, if you stop at, hey, I'm getting some audits done, and that's like my security posture, in my opinion, that's way, way too little. Right? It needs to be a much bigger and more robust strategy. So I mentioned this maybe about 3 weeks ago in like the 2 months of Badger post, but we've been looking at it through a few different lenses. One was we obviously need to have our internal security review and practice and protocols, which we have, and we have different people that are incentivized to participate in that and help us with peer review and dig into the testing and everything associated with that outside of the core team. Then we went forward and started what we would call all-encompassing security audit, which does not include smart contracts. And this audit spans everything from personnel to the web interface and hardening that interface to all of the things that are necessary on the system side on how you interact with the smart contracts and manage the system to potentially prevent any exploits and vulnerabilities. And, with this type of capital, you can assume that very, very skilled people from around the world are looking at exploiting the systems, right? Like that's just, a very fair thing to think about. So we've gone through that practice and we significantly upgraded our infrastructure and how we manage and interact with the systems over the last 30 days, which brings a lot of ease to people on the core team, of course, because, we feel responsible for everything that's Badger since we brought it to life. But nonetheless, that was a very, really great experience. I'll tell you that. I mean, it's not an experience that ends now. It's just ongoing practice. But I'm really glad, and I'll probably encourage a lot of other protocols to go through the same practice. It's almost like a CISO on demand type activity with a deep audit to kick it off. And the other pillar is, okay, great, you're doing these assessments, you have these good internal reviews, you're doing audits as necessary, awesome. But what happens if there is an exploit, right? We've had the privilege, I say we, people in DeFi and crypto, to have a front row seat to see what happens when an exploit does happen in many of these protocols, that we all saw in the last 4 or 5 months. And what ends up happening is a group of white hackers come together that have deep understanding of the systems and the ability to repeat and replicate that exploit, come to the rescue, essentially, and help these protocols and come together to help them mitigate the issue, stop the bleeding, and then make the appropriate changes to patch the issue. So we thought, why don't we get in front of that? So we started working on building the Badger War Room with some of the folks that were in all of these types of scenarios that we talked about before. They were the people that came to the rescue, and we're going to be sharing who they are and all those types of things next week. But for the most part, it's about being proactive. It's about having a handful of highly skilled people that we trust, that we have relationships with, that are familiar with our systems, to which we've set up appropriate contact management and rules and responsibilities. And one of the key responsibilities is having the ability to pause and only pause, nothing else, contracts in the Badger system. So if you're able to spot some type of vulnerability, you have the ability to really put the pause button on and prevent the bleeding. And why that's important is you got to think about what's happened in a few of these different scenarios, different exploits. A lot of the times the protocols were being handled by a multi-sig, and the exploits happened in the middle of the night, and people couldn't get a hold of each other. Like, how crazy is that, right? It's like millions and millions of dollars, and that's one of the things. And it's no one's fault outside of the fact, like, everyone's figuring this out, like I said before. So having the ability for global coverage, people familiar with the system so they can jump to the rescue, quote unquote, very quickly, and then have the right responsibilities to pause and stop the bleeding, I think is a big step forward. And I hope that other protocols collaborate with us so that we can all have each other's back and help each other out. So that proactive war room, I'm really excited to share more details about next week. And then just the last piece there I'd share, we've been putting together an advisory board to which the people that are on that have deep domain expertise around DeFi protocols, because they're the technology officers that built them, some of the most prominent ones in our space. And also on the auditing side, and audited hundreds, I would argue, of different smart contracts and projects in the crypto space. So once again, I'm gonna be bringing those people to light and announcing that probably over the next week or two. But I'm really excited to have people like that have that type of experience to share with us as we continue to grow and build, and advise us around ideally the right types of things to do, or the experience they had already going through building things similar to us. So I'll stop there, John, because it's a mouthful, but yeah. Really that's our approach right now to security, is like I said, by far the most important thing.
Yeah, and something that's even built in that didn't mention is a couple things were done out of the gate to protect vault depositors from attack. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both of these were done where you can't deposit and withdraw on one transaction, so that helps limit flash loan attacks, and smart contracts need to be whitelisted for interaction, right?
Correct. Yeah, we did a deep analysis of like the exploits, the flash loan exploits that happened before we launched, and then we made some hard decisions, because it really locks down the fort, right? Like smart contract wallets, to which we're big fans of, they can't interact with our systems. It's just what it is. So we have to make that hard decision, and we made it, and I'm really happy we made that decision the way it is today, because it's helped us get to where we are without facing some of those, at least.
Yeah, and things can always change down the line, but I totally agree. And I think this is one of the things I was harping in the Discord about, is like, it's going to be new. Let's just not rock the boat. It's not tempt fate. A couple, relatively simple things can be done to mitigate any attacks.
Totally.
Great.
Totally.
Yeah, I guess I'll wrap up from a few of the things that I've been, focusing on recently, as we hopefully come out more to the community soon, is really just kind of the back end, the uglier stuff, as far as getting the flow of information right, from the community back to the community, right? Like, not everyone's going to weigh in on every model and every product and things like that, but you want to be able to take information from the community, have certain people kind of distill it down, and then represent it for feedback, and eventually for a vote. So there was a lot of feedback on some of the BIPs that we kind of pushed through and made kind of rushed through even over the holidays when everyone was, kids were off school and we're all home with our families trying to get, BIPs in for Digg and other things. And what we want to do is have a higher standard for that as far as putting modeling together for any of these kind of major changes. So things that people should be expecting to see soon is just, and you've already seen it with, I think, the most recent BIP that went out from Mr. Poe around, first week of 2 asset emissions, kind of taking, okay, this is our stance on how we're going to handle multi-asset emissions across all vaults, and it's setting up a system. So some of these are pretty complicated, but hopefully we're setting a good groundwork to where when we're in the future, we're just making decisions of like, hey, we're bringing on a new partner. Do we want to give a little bit more to them? Or like, do we want to split a little bit more to this type of vault or this type of vault? But we have the framework for having that discussion. And what we had to do was even get the forum framework built for getting feedback on the parameters, and then getting the snapshot framework working to even get to the point where we can get that feedback and say, okay, yes, we like this model for handling weekly emissions, and then we can just use that going forward. So, some of it's going to be, there's going to be more complicated BIPs coming pretty soon, because that's a big focus right now is treasury and emissions management. So, focus on sustainability. How can we make sure that we can continue having high APYs for vaults? How can we make sure that we're using all of the Digg and Badger that the treasury is using and deploying? How can we use it smartly? We don't just give it to people to give to people. We want to make sure that, there's a reason behind it. So just even building the framework for having discussions of those reasons is what we're focused on now. And having, there's spreadsheets going around, models. I think we're finally starting to get it tightened up. DeFi Frog and Mr. Poe have been big on that. I think Mason is going to be involved in some of the treasury stuff. But I guess one of the things that we are excited about that is coming out soon is kind of a 4-part almost set of BIPs. The first one was the multi-asset, dual asset emissions. So that one was already out for snapshot vote. Hopefully today we'll get the peg-based rewards, peg-based emissions out there. Next, we'll be looking to actually, the multiplier on vaults is going to run out after 8 weeks. So we still want to continue rewarding Badger stakers, Badger holders. And the question is, okay, how do we do that? And how do we make Badger, mean something? So we're actually looking to take the stake days ratio calculation from the Digg drop, where it's total rewards earned. It's your stake days over total rewards earned. But what we can do is actually use stake days over a trailing period, 30, 60 days. This will all come up, all these parameters will come up for vote. So we'll have these, trailing stake days compared to how many, what amount of the emissions are you targeted to get right now. So obviously there's major whales and there's, little shrimp. And what we'll do is just look at your ratio. So if you want to, it's not saying you need to have more Badger than a whale staked to get a higher multiplier. But if we say we want a highest multiplier of 3, meaning that at any point relative to what they would get otherwise, we want someone to get 3 times more than the person who is at the top of the list, get 3 times more than the person at the bottom of the list. And what that list is actually ordered by your stake days ratio. So if you are staking Badger for that whole 60 days and a large amount of Badger relative to your total earned rewards, then you will be moved to the top of that list and have a higher ratio. So this is kind of a first step into, and this will be another BIP coming out, a first step in tying the value of Badger to getting better treatment, better rewards in the system.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about that. I think, call a spade, there is a lot of people that leverage Badger to get Badger and sell Badger, right? A lot of people will say farming and dumping type activities. Mm-hmm. With this new multiplier, it will discourage a lot of people from taking that action, and it will reward people that believe enough in Badger to stake that Badger and participate, right? And they see the long-term vision. And I think that's going to do a lot for the underlying value of the token in the market as well. It'll just change the buy and sell dynamics, right? It'll just be less people selling every day because of the fact that more people are rewarded for earning. So once again, it's about pushing the boundaries, right? Like this whole thing's about pushing the boundaries. How do we, in building our apps and incentivizing people to participate, how do you reward the right people? And, you know, as DeFi evolves and liquidity mining evolves, like these are the types of things that protocols are going to do, including us. It's the days of, hey, stake in this pool and get, 1 million %, APY, and then it goes down the next day, and then the project's dead in 2 weeks. Like those days are gone, right? Like that was a very short experiment, and now it's about how do you build sustainability into this emissions model, and how do you tie it into treasury management and the buyback, program. At least that's the way we think about it, right? So it's like you were saying, right, John, like we're looking at these different layers of the stack, ideally making our way towards just building this sustainable foundation for incentivizing the right people and managing the capital and the profits accordingly. And it's, when I say we, I mean the community, right? Like that's what Badger's all about. Badger's all about an open collective of people coming together. Like, John, like me and you, we don't know each other outside of Discord and video calls in the last, 3.5 months, right? You joined the community, we started chatting, you wanted to get, like, that's how it all is. And same with Fry, and same with Mason, and same with Frog, and same with Mitch, and it's just, and ideally that just grows more and more and more, and you're able to bring people that have that level of passion, level of domain expertise, and willingness to participate because of the incentivization structure and the value that they've received from our products, but in turn, like having a real voice. Like quite a few people have said that to me. Like when we come into Badger and we participate in Badger, like we say things like things actually happen. It's not just like saying it for governance sake and like fuck all happens because a few people are making decisions anyways. That's really not the case. It's like genuinely people coming together and deciding on things as a collective.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't heard of Badger really before September, got involved. I was just a community member. Now I've kind of just, kept contributing, and, now I'm on the call. But the other community members that are now contributing to these models, like, yeah, I can put together an Excel spreadsheet and say, okay, this kind of makes sense to me, but you need feedback. And most of those we just snagged from people who are putting really thoughtful comments in the forum. It's like, hey, like, can I pull you in a Discord channel with some other folks and like, let's talk through this in more detail so that we can put a more thoughtful proposal through in the BIP. And that's kind of how things have gone. And other people will lead other BIPs and other initiatives. It's just kind of how things have fallen so far. Great. Well, we should probably hop to the list of questions. But I think one last thing, I don't know if you want to just do a quick hit on like the couple questions here about other products that are coming, and I know we've got a few that are brewing. So if you just want to give a quick rundown on those, and then we can hop to the AMA questions.
Yeah, and I feel like we've done a decent job answering a lot of those AMA questions already, right? Like we've been tying them all into what we've been talking about, not just sitting here, you and I, shooting what. No, but there's two pieces to this that I think is really important to talk about. How do new products come to life? Number one, and then what new products are coming to life based on that process. So the way that Badger was set up was the whole goal is to be an umbrella for all the best builders in the industry to come together and build the products necessary to accelerate Bitcoin and open finance or decentralized finance. Like that's the whole premise here. It's not some guys in a room coming up with product ideas and bringing it to market. That's not how this works at all. And with the incentivization structure that we've put in place, we've carved out 15% of the supply, which is just a little bit lower. I think 23% is for liquidity mining, but 15% of the supply is in a pool called the developer mining pool. And the only way to earn from that pool is by developing products or vault strategies, but things that bring revenue to the DAO. And if you do that, not only do you earn Badger from that pool, to which you then genuinely have shared ownership and the ability to make decisions around those products you're creating because everyone votes with Badger. But then you also get a percentage share of the revenue that comes out of that product. That's how products come to life. So we've had so many people, and we've been lucky enough that a lot of these people that have come to us in the last month to build products aren't, just some rando Fernando type person, right? Like We've had different existing DeFi protocols with really robust teams, deep domain expertise, and just a lot of passion for Bitcoin and Bitcoin in DeFi come to us and want to participate in this type of fashion. So what types of products are we focused on building? The products that we're focused on building that have been brought to us have been around making Badger and the Badger app the one-stop shop for all things Bitcoin on Ethereum, and then eventually other chains. So what are the types of things people do with it? Well, they of course mint tokenized Bitcoin from native Bitcoin, right? That's one thing. So we have a team probably in the next 2.5 weeks that will be ready to launch our mint function in Yen, where you have the ability to deposit and then vice versa, go from tokenized Bitcoin back to Bitcoin. And we're going to be powering that through the REN VM. Then another key function, and we can all relate, including myself and you, John, is we want to make it easier and faster for people to go from a single asset into our vaults to start earning yield. Today, they have to take RENBTC, SBTC, TBTC, and WBTC, go to Curve, deposit in Curve, take those LP tokens, come to us, put it in the Sett, stake it before they can start earning. We are working with a group that everyone knows, but I'm sure we'll share in the next week or two, where we can do very quick zaps. So right in the app, we'll have a quick deposit, and you'll be able to go from any of those assets right into the vault in a click. No questions asked, really quick, right? And I think that's going to really expand the ability for people to come in and out, as we talked about, is important for generating revenue and value inside the DAO and just making a better experience. So that's another key feature and product that will, once again, participate in the developer mining pool, earn shared revenue from it, as will the DAO. And every product that I'm talking about is all revenue producing for the DAO, which is really exciting. The third product, which I'm personally the most excited about, has a running name, Badger Dollars. And it goes to the concept that I mentioned a little earlier, which is how do we open up the loop and bring additional value to illiquid assets? So the fact that there is $700 million worth of Bitcoin in our vaults, if we can allow people to use those vault positions as collateral to borrow stable coins, I think that brings Badger to a primitive level in the DeFi stack. It creates a level of stickiness with those users, and it will help us expand our TVL, but maintain a lot of the TVL that we also have today, because now we're bringing additional value to these users. And we're going to be introducing, probably within 3 or 4 days, the proposal on this partners forum and governance structure for having our Sett Vault assets approved. And I tend to throw dates out there sometimes and I get in trouble with it, but the 3 products that I spoke about, I personally would love to see them all live in the market by middle of February. I think that's very realistic. And once again, it's not just like, 4 or 5 guys in a room working on it. These are 3 separate teams that have their own resources and efforts that are building with the DAO, because the DAO is everyone's, right? It's the communities. So that's the process. And I just say, I encourage anybody that wants, if you're an individual with technical skills, without technical skills, if you're a dev shop, if you're a protocol, if you're a project, and you want to focus on building these types of things, come to the Discord, talk to the team, talk to the community, come to the forum, put proposals together. These are the types of things on how this stuff starts and how it accelerates. And I'd love to just see more and more of this type of stuff. And that's ideally, over the next, 6 to 12 months, you wouldn't need to leave. A lot of users wouldn't need to leave Badger to do all the things that they would want to do with tokenized Bitcoin, which would be amazing.
And, the kind of more core community and team folks that are in some of the, core chats, we don't agree on everything, but I think the one thing we do agree on is this focus on sustainability and what these new products do. We're not going to give out Badger at 400% APY to Badger staking, or 50% APY to Bitcoin staking in perpetuity. You just can't do it.
Awesome.
But by tying the value of Badger to getting better rewards in the system, you're locking up Badger, hopefully improving the value of Badger for adding new products. Not only does that generate fees for the system, but it means that, the users demand less direct APY from emissions, because they can do more with their asset. So that's something that, is being considered, very fully, so we can get these things up and running. Like, that's what the main focus is now. It's like, okay, we know where the end line is. We know we can kind of extend it. We can kind of keep going for a while. There's a nice big treasury. What can we do to make these things, nice and sustainable and have great options for the users going forward?
And John, what's important there, and it's always, like, I've heard this question a lot, it's in the AMA questions we're about to go through. It's like, what's the value of Badger if, like, Digg's coming out and you have these products, all these types of things? First and foremost, Badger is the only token that can be used in the entire ecosystem to make decisions on any and all products, all parameters, all fees, on anything associated with it, including Digg. There's going to be 50% of the Digg supply in the treasury. If you have Digg, you have no control over that supply. Badger token holders have control over that supply, and they also have control over the parameters of Digg. How often does it rebase? What actual rebasing models are we using? That's all going to be Badger holders. At the same time, we start talking about these other products, minting and borrowing against your vault positions, all this stuff. Where are all those fees going, right? All those fees that are generated for the DAO, where are they going? Well, they're going to be going back to people that are staked in the Badger vault. And then, of course, the subsequent value that we want to bring to the market there is, how do you use your B Badger or your vault position of Badger in lending and borrowing protocols, in other places where it's not just sitting in that vault. And that's where I think people start understanding more the inherent value in Badger as a true governance token and participation mechanism for the DAO.
Yeah. Great. Well, I guess I'll just I can rapid fire these questions. I'll just kind of tackle the ones that are easy and that I don't think we have addressed yet, and then any more complicated ones I'll toss your way. So a lot of questions about Digg. I think we covered that great. One about Ethereum gas prices, future enhancements to help, that. As far as I know, I don't think there's anything specifically in the works, but everyone would be totally down with proposals that or ideas that people have to, there's a lot of different L2 solutions out there. I don't think much can be done about gas in the current state on mainnet. But, I think we would all love the opportunity to have some options for Badger on various L2s. So if you want to get involved, hop in and reach out.
And we started some conversations with a prominent L2 provider and solution in the market just over the last couple of weeks. So those conversations are starting, but once again, they're very preliminary. But I think it's obvious, right? Like, if it costs $100 to claim and then another $100 to stake, that's like super unsustainable, right? It just doesn't. We got to find other solutions for that. That's for sure.
Yeah, you want people to be able to have $100 of it and get value of it. So totally, on mind. How do I get my airdrop when it happens? How will I know it happened? Well, keep an eye on Twitter. We'll try to give a good leading into it for when it's going to happen. The Discord, I got great mods in there, working on all the time. So there's support channels, there's a general channel. Definitely hop in there. They'll be able to point you in the right direction. It'll be on the app, so app.badger.finance. If V2's out then, either way, it'll be clear on the dashboard. Like it was last time. You go on the dashboard, there's a big rectangle that says, come get your, airdrop here.
There's a question here that I'm looking at, and we'll just kind of, when we see ones that make sense with the Gitcoin grant. So airdrop. So we've heard about that a lot. Like, why isn't the Gitcoin airdrop? We've had some people complain. At the end of the day, it took some time to collect the data. It's then a process of putting that data together and putting it into the system, testing it in the system, and doing the airdrop through the app. At the same time, there's a new app coming out, right? And that changes like the whole dynamics of it. There's obviously Digg coming out. There's all these things that are happening. We're 1,000,000% committed, and I think we've highlighted this, how much we value being able to support Gitcoin in general. But we're 100% committed to fulfilling that airdrop, and we'll be doing that relatively soon. And once we do, we'll announce it, and we'll make sure that everyone's rewarded accordingly.
Yep. A lot of questions about how to calculate the Digg you'll get. It's pretty complicated. We've explained it a few times. Try to make as much information leading up to it as clear as possible. But generally, you can look at just kind of how many rewards you've earned versus the total. We'll give you kind of a rough estimate. If you had been staking Badger this whole time, or at least some Badger this whole time, likely you're going to also be another 35%. So your relative rewards earned on like the 1.75 root with the cap will be what will account for 80 or 90% of your rewards earned. And will the NFTs have anything to do with Digg? Yes, there's a whole post on that for how actually we are rewarding NFT holders. Fairly somewhat complex mechanism for determining a score based on how many you hold. Just hold as many unique of Badger NFTs as possible if you want to maximize your portion of that drop. A lot of people I was shocked at how fast people backed out the math when I shared the formula to figure out what kind of like the quote unquote price was for all the different assets. But then Bitcoin, I think, went up another 50% from there. So I don't know how valid that is.
It's great. Like I'm like super excited about how NFTs can be leveraged in the system. Like that's when we started with the unique Honey Badger pot with me, and and I obviously don't have the say in the end of the day, the community does, but like I'm going to continue to propose that we leverage the existing NFTs that we have and additional NFTs that we make in the future to drive certain value within the system, right? Like a couple things that we've talked about is, getting APY boosts if you have certain NFTs in your wallet while you're using the Badger app. We've talked about point systems where you can collect points in our protocol and in other protocols. If you're lending WBTC on Compound, or if you're providing liquidity for it on Sushi or Uni, you build up certain points, and once you hit a certain point threshold, you move up a level, and that's recognized with an NFT. And you can then use that once again for access to exclusive products, APY boosting, faster form, whatever these types of things that the community thinks makes the most sense. But I'm excited to experiment with this intersection between NFTs and open finance applications in 2021.
Definitely. All right. Would the community support a Badger band called System of a Down? Totally. Yeah, let's get a bip out there for it. Hop in. I'm down with that. Will there be another airdrop? A lot of new products coming. I don't think there's anything that's set right now, but I don't think this is, the product's not over yet. So, just tune in. How many devs are working full-time, part-time? I think you touched on the developer program. I think that's a great way to expand to track devs, but do you have a rough number for full-time, part-time?
We have about 20 different contributors in our GitHub. Not all of them are active full-time. We have about 4 full-time, developers, as you'd call them. Maybe I think 5 now, and then another 5 that are relatively part-time. But then we also have, kind of like our peer review network of people that we're soon going to propose during the grants that are compensated with Badger, but that are helping us at every stage in doing a lot of the smart contracts that we're getting ready to bring to market. And Digg and the Sushi Vaults and Digg were really our first attempts at this, right? So like, when we were building this prior to launch, we obviously had our network, but that was more like the personal network, right? And the people that were in the community at the time. The community has grown 10 times, 15 times from the beginning. And now we have people that are not only willing to participate, but also have, they're vested into Badger that have stepped up to want to take on those roles. And like, when I say that I hope Badger becomes the environment for all the best builders, like I genuinely say that as many people that want to contribute in any form or fashion get involved, right? We have bounties, so if we want to do a small or medium project or task to start off and get a feel for things, do that. We do our grants every month that have a variety of different roles from front end, back end, whatever it may be that makes sense for them. Come into Discord and just do stuff, right? Like a couple of really good examples are Gentile and VFAT. Both of them stepped up with Sett Vision and VFAT.tools when we first launched, and they've been super involved since, right? They're in the dev Discord, they're working on projects, they've been really active in the Digg launch, and they're just doing things and participating and contributing. And it could be something small, it could be something big. And I encourage everyone and anyone that wants to get involved. And I'm also really excited to collaborate with Gitcoin this year around it. We're going to be doing tons of stuff around their funnel programs, around their bounties, around their hackathons, around their grant programs, specifically around engaging the development community and giving back to public goods and supporting public goods.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, build stuff, propose stuff. I think we're just looking to grow. The more developer mindshare, the better. And we're working on the mechanisms for how to actually organize and approach these things. And I've even got like a scope for a product around Digg. If you're a developer and want to help build it, and we can tap it into the developer mining program, like hit me up. Like that's kind of how the things work. A lot of these, there's kind of like the core track that's being attacked, but it's a DAO. So build things, propose things. And
the core track became the core track, John, because of people that approached us. Community saying, hey, we want to do these things, and then it became like, well, we just put a bounty out for it, and then like I'll take that bounty, boom, and that's just how it goes,
Yep. So I think the last kind of things we haven't touched on, a couple questions around just the total fees that have been earned to this point, and then kind of the general plans for how we'll use them. So what? Do you know the number
right now, they're growing so fast. Like, I hate to say it like that. They are. Last time I checked, I think they're about $1.3 million in profit. They've been generated in the last 35 or 36 days. What's really exciting about that, I'll be honest, is I think like 30% of it has come from our recent launch of the sushi balls, which was only, I don't know, like 12 or 13 days ago, not even. So like we've seen this massive uptick in profit for the DAO through those vaults, which is really exciting. And we're deciding, when I say we, I say a group of people within the community are working on, of course, giving feedback and insight around treasury management. And that's not necessarily just around how you manage the profits that are generated, but treasury as a whole. And ideally, as we've talked about from the beginning, one of the next big steps is how we distribute those fees back to Badger holders and Badger stakers, and also how we leverage those fees for a buyback program. I think that's very, we've talked about that a ton, right? So those are the types of things that we're thinking about, and that's just going to continue to expand because, at least my thought process is if we want to build the sustainable engine of the DAO, we need to have reoccurring revenue from multiple products, from multiple different types of users. And with every product that's coming to market in the next 60 days, the intention here is for them to be revenue and profit producing for the DAO.
Yeah, we're all, that's like I said, one of the things we're super aligned on, and it seems like the community's responded well to the stuff that we've proposed as well, but there'll be more information coming out on that. And I think, it's kind of like the emissions, we're going to have to lay like a groundwork for a framework first. Like this is kind of how we all agree the treasury should be managed at a very high level so that we can then within that framework start proposing like, configuration changes and how we want to do things. And a couple of people did ask about, value accrual for Badger, and that really speaks to that. If we're going to put in a buyback program configured in some way to use these fees to buy Badger off the market to then use that to continue emissions in the future, like we want to be the place where you get the best return, get the most use out of your Bitcoin in DeFi. We can only do that if we have Badger to use to reward people, and we need to get that off the market. And the more valuable Badger is, the less we have to give people for the same APY on their amount of Bitcoin. So it all kind of feeds together, and it's like, how can we get this loop? And it's been great to get a good chunk of flow into the DAO. I mean, obviously we've given out way more Badger than $1.3 million, but this is the bootstrap and this is the distribution period. And these pips that'll be coming out soon will start kind of have more of a forward-looking approach where we start taking the fees into account. We start saying, okay, what do we want to get out of LP sets? Like, do we start rewarding certain behaviors for different types of LP providers? Or different ways we can use that flow of assets to bring value to the token and the project.
Well, certainly. Well, John, I think that's the clock.
Yeah.
we should, we've been about an hour and change after having a little bit of a bumpy start. But, this is great, dude. Like, I want to do this as often as we can. I think collecting information from the feedback, having different community members be and run the Sett sessions and participate in these, I think is fantastic. And I couldn't be more pumped, right? Like, I'm so excited for the year ahead of us. I think, Badger in particular is in a really good spot as it relates to the intersection between Bitcoin and DeFi. And, of course, with Bitcoin, crushing it lately, I think that does a lot for everything, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And, hopefully keep these regular, get more people on. Probably won't be as long because there won't be as much in between, but, it's been a busy month and some change. Look forward to doing some more and really looking forward to the next couple of months.
Me too, man. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Talk soon.